My name is Noah Kim, and I will be demonstrating for you guys the Finality rover that me and Lawrence Check have been working on for quite a while now. Um, yeah, anyway, let's get right into it. You see here that we have a very standard Scorpion model for the rover. The body is quite balanced. We spent a lot of time making sure that the weight of the suspension and the weight of the arm and camera were balanced out, making sure that the rover would not topple. I know that a lot of designs like to go for big blocks or sharp lines. We wanted to avoid this because through our physical testing, that usually leads to quite a lot of spillover and falling over, which is not particularly good when you're looking for a rover. So there's that. There's a couple main things that you're looking at here. The arm here is much larger when you look at it from the side perspective, but is essentially one of the main attractions of our rover here. It lets the rover pick up anything and everything for whatever reason it might need. We also have a camera right here that is capable of moving in omnidirectional planes, and essentially it can record the surrounding environment. I'll get into the direction in the movement study later, but for now, let's continue on with the presentation. You see in the back here, we have solar panels. Although this is one of our main sources of energy, we also have here a battery or a generator or both that is a secondary source of power for the rover, which is optimal because the sun is not always guaranteed on extraterrestrial terrain, especially considering the fact that dust storms are quite something that is something that we should be wary of at the very least. If you look to the lower section here, we have our suspension. We did not copy off the same suspension model that everyone else did. We thought it would be wise to model our own. So we have here our suspension. It is, as many people have used, a two-part suspension to make sure that the rover is capable of driving on all terrain without any sort of disruptance or discrepancy, as each module is capable of moving by itself and balances safely underneath the chassis. We also went with the double layer wheel because it balanced the rover out more. We tried building the rover with merely 6 wheels, but that usually led for an extreme amount of pressure on the shaft of the wheel, which would cause it to buckle and eventually break, especially when going over terrain or objects or any other such. Yeah, so let's get right into it. The first thing that I'd like to demonstrate here is obviously the movement. We have here the wheels being capable of rolling. These wheels are designed to essentially grab onto the terrain with its serrated treads. In our original design, we did actually have tank treads, but we went against that because we discovered that it was quite inefficient and heavy, which is not something you want in a rover. These can go at any speeds, fast, slow, regardless. And yeah, it's a driving mechanism behind our rover. Next, we have the turning of the wheels, if it'll load. You can see here that although we have an all-wheel drive system, we are turning or steering by the front wheels, as most modern cars do, because we believe that was more optimal than trying to find an almost symmetric movement for the back wheels to turn at the same time. Remember that this is relatively large, and although it fits within the constraints of our design of the required design, we thought it would be inefficient to try and turn 6 wheels or even 4 wheels at once. So we're going to stick with the main 2 in the front, or I guess 4 in this case because we're using on both sides. Let me just run that one more time to in an animation so that you can see this movement relatively slowly. Yeah, you can see here that it's capable. It turns left, it turns right, and essentially lets us steer the rover in whatever way we want to. Next, our suspension, the thing that took arguably the longest in our entire project. Here we have the study for the suspension. You will notice that the subsuspension on the rear moves slightly farther up and down compared to that of the subsuspension in the front, and that is because it is designed to accommodate multiple planes of movement at the same time, as this subsystem is subsuspension system design is meant for. If you can imagine, when the rover is going over a large object, it is able to keep at least two wheels on the ground at any given point, or sorry, I guess four wheels on the ground at any given point, because as the rear subsuspension goes up and down, it guarantees a point of contact. We went over this in our report, which is known as, I believe, Euclid's 2-2-1 postulate, but essentially it is a very powerful and commonly used tool that we also decided to implement within our own design. 1 second while I flatten out here. Thanks. Yeah, then we have the large arm, which is designed to grab stuff pretty much anywhere to the immediate front of the rover. It also has quite a few degrees of movement so that it can reach beyond the scope of just the rover, and you don't have to so you don't have to turn the rover every single time you want to grab something. And let's play it here. Oh, that's jolty. You can see here that it is able to not only reach the ground, but it is capable of reaching to the side. Both all directions of movement is acceptable within this model because we have lowered the shelf of its stand by a significant amount compared to the rest of the rover. This was really, really important for us because we realized that by having an appendage essentially at the top of a rover was incredibly counterintuitive, as it would easily knock over the rover and cause a misbalance due to the fact that the center of mass was far drawn upwards or to the side if when placed directly on top of the rover. As such, we did drop it closer towards the entire rover center of mass, so it wouldn't continue to fall over and other stuff like that. Oh wait, this is a good example of the suspension as I was mentioning earlier. Let's go to the other side. The claw is small, but also highly detailed. Although it may look small in comparison to the rest of the rover, it is quite large in reality and can very safely grab whatever soil samples or rock samples that you might need on another planet. It's modular in a four-system fashion with 2 linkages and a piston at the end. At the base of the arm. And it should just be able to reach out and grab. You can see the multiple degrees of movement here, where it goes up and down, but which allows it to rotate side to side from the base over there. Quite nice if you ask me. Next, we have the battery. We noticed that a lot of people were incorporating quite fanatical battery designs, especially within our current spring semester class. So we decided on a more realistic and probable method of containing energy, which is the standard generator and battery. Although it is not optimal for a rover to use a generator at any given moment when solar power is available, when solar power is not available and something must be carried out to completion, such as a task, it is important that we have another fallback option to rely on. So here is the battery that we decided to install within the rover, which also doubles as a generator due to the spinning nature of the entire component. You see here that it spins over and over again. A small amount of energy could get this spin started and essentially jumpstart the entire rover if need be. Mind you, we also made it quite large so that it's able to store a large amount of energy, as we are quite worried about energy management and efficiency when driving around on a different planet. And a second source of energy, beyond just the battery, is the solar panel. We decided to add 1 degree of movement on the side here as almost a hinge, where it would allow the solar panels to angle itself in comparison to the flatness of the rover, and essentially reach out towards the rays of the sun in a more regulated fashion. Although the sun beats down on Mars quite often, By often I mean all the time. Dust storms are possible, like a blockage is possible, an eclipse is possible. As such, it is quite necessary even to have solar panels be able to angle themselves to the correct angle and direction to face the sun and make the most out of its energy. Mind you, we only get a percentage of uh, the maximum output of the of the sun when solar panels are not facing the sun, which is why we have to angle them even on here on Earth. Which is why we decided to add this hinge. Even if this hinge is not perfect, it still allows for degrees of rotation and will save us so much time and energy in the future, especially if this model is supposedly launched. Lastly, we have the camera as a motion study. The camera is as highly detailed as we possibly can get it. It's modeled after the Canon F36 model, I believe, which is the same one they used in the Curiosity model. However, we decided to put it on a rather thick mast, as we were concerned with the risk of it breaking, especially in that of like a dust storm or when traversing rocky terrain. You can see that there is a piston both below it, but also a rotation and movement hinge like right here, as it'll allow the camera to have all degrees of movement and scan the area quite effectively. Oh, that's quite fast. Here. Yes. You can see that the camera is able to have 360-degree rotation on the frontal plane, right? But it's also able to bend forward and backwards on its sagittal plane, I believe, which is quite important as it allows the camera to look at something else that's not perfectly straight. Especially when you want to analyze not just a sample that's attached to the arm, but also the weather, the terrain, the environment around it, and other stuff. This rover is designed to be as lightweight and efficient as possible, but also to be able to gather as much data as possible for scientists and future researchers to analyze. As such, we thought it would be very, very important that the camera have as much degree of freedom of movement as possible. All these components are connected by pins and or screws. Even the most smallest of pieces, like the suspension subsection 1 or the back wheel, all have their own customized and personally dimensioned pins with a tolerance of 0.5 millimeters, if I'm correct, which is the standard tolerance for smaller components as such. However, there is a not so generous tolerance when going for the solar panels, which we thought would be important to be almost flush to the hinge to prevent any sort of shakiness or risk of damage long term when running the rover. The suspension is also a 0.5 millimeter tolerance, as we do need the suspension to move, and if it is almost flush to the other components, then it will just have a frictional force working against it, which is not optimal considering the fact that we want to preserve as much energy as possible and not have things working against us. I will cut to an exploded view so you could see all these pins in 3, 2, 1. You can see here just how many components we have. There are quite a lot of pins, as there are a lot of movements that we wanted to have, especially in our movement study here. The main focus of our rover, in the end, was to be as lightweight, efficient, and modular as possible. We have taken great efforts to make sure that every piece or component is as light as possible. That is why our chassis is so small when compared to the rest of the suspension. A lot of people just make massive like chassis, and it just makes no functional sense from design or aesthetic, because you're trying to save energy. If something is so obscenely heavy that it could barely carry its own weight, then it's not something that you wish to have on an expedition, such as like a Mars or a extraterrestrial expedition. Additionally, so many of the components here are super hollow. You could look at the wheels here, are connected by strong but almost like spaced out like structures, as to prevent overcrowding and density of components within the same location. Even the suspension of the front here is hollow to make sure that there is no extra weight being carried around for no reason. Additionally, we did want this entire rover to be modular. That's why everything is attached via pins, and what in the future we hope to be servos and motors. It's so that if need be, these rovers could be sent in mass and not the standard one by one method that we've done in the past, where we send one singular rover at a time. Due to the lightweight and almost cheap nature of these rovers that we've created, me and Lawrence, we fully intend for it to be essentially mass sent to other planets. Like, it would be one piece of data is great, but so is 10, so is 100. Anyway, we did take this design to a physical model, as we have described earlier. It was definitely hard to do, but we thought it would be a good idea to add, as it would demonstrate the fact that this rover model is not just something that we designed, but something that we genuinely thought out, and we fully believe can be designed or taken to the next step and essentially be developed as an actual rover. That'll be cut to in 3, 2, 1. We good?
Yep.
Alright, that's the terrain. 3, 2, 1, go. Nice. And that just about wraps up what we have here. Me and Lawrence have worked incredibly hard on this rover for the past 2.5 weeks. We've gone to great lengths to ensure that this is not just a model that looks nice or works in CAD, but is applicable in real life, and draws from many models that have been previously used on actual Mars expeditions. One day we might actually be able to send this somewhere, but as of right now, thank you for listening to the podcast. Like I said, a great deal of effort went into this. It was not a menial task learning something from the ground up. But yeah, thank you. Have a good day.